Welcome into the Rundown on Fox Sports Radio 1400 around the world in the iHeartRadio app. My name is Rob Sanders. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. We got a big show planned for you, including Mike Leach goes on a rant that is almost epic. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. But first, I want to head out to the phones and welcome in friend of the program from the ACC Digital Network, Wes Bryant. Wes, what's going on, buddy? How are you, man?
What's going on, Rob? Good to be back with you talking again. We got ACC championship game, the moment we've all been waiting for.
I know, right? And we've kind of picked this game out. This is I hate to use the term made for TV thing, but this is kind of what we thought was going to happen at the beginning of the season, right?
Yes, we sure did. And we're here now. You can't ask for a better matchup. Biggest ACC championship game of all time.
You know, I'm going to talk about that a little bit later on, but I'm going to go ahead and ask you about this. In my opinion, do you think Notre Dame really cares? I mean, they're going to go to the college football playoff, I think, win or lose.
Oh, I definitely think they care. From a program standpoint, this is a program defining game for them. We know their reputation with big teams over the last few years, where they're playing Alabama's or the Ohio States or the Clemsons. But this is the barometer for them, and especially with the fact that Trevor Lawrence and some of Clemson's key defensive players didn't play the first time. They hear the whispers. They hear the chatter that first win was kind of a fluke, so to speak. So definitely Notre Dame cares very much. To have on your resume that you swept arguably the best team in college football in a given season with the quarterback the caliber of Trevor Lawrence, Notre Dame cares for sure. You better believe that.
Well, but on that front, though, do you think Notre Dame cares about being in the conference after this season, or do you think it was just a one-time stop and shop and they're heading on their way out?
I'm not sure. I mean, who knows with that? I did see Brian Kelly's comments, though, and he spoke very, very favorably of being in ACC this year, and he said he was going to go back to his AD with his thoughts on whether or not they wanted to maybe continue that going forward or whether they wanted to stay independent. So, but, you know, who knows what the future may hold. But he talked very highly about the ACC and how much he enjoyed being in the conference this year and also having an opportunity to play for a conference championship, which I think is also something big for Notre Dame that could help them going forward. Whereas, you know, once they finish their season, they have to sit back and watch everybody else playing. Yes, they have that brand and the golden helmets. We know that. But they have to sit back and kind of wait to see if everybody else plays and maybe hopes on a given year somebody may falter a little bit to get them in or something like that. So with them, you know, have an opportunity to play. We know the term out of sight, out of mind. So Notre Dame I think they kind of like the idea of being able to play in a game of this big and for the nation and the college football playoff committee to be able to see them play in such a big game like this.
What do you think is the pivotal matchup in this game? Do you think it's Trevor Lawrence against that the Notre Dame defense or the Clemson rushing attack against that Notre Dame defense that, let's be honest, especially after watching North Carolina just beat Miami senseless over the weekend on the ground where they averaged over 10 yards a carry. If you go back and look at that game with Notre Dame, they kind of held the Tar Heels in check. Do you think that's the big matchup there is the running game for Clemson against that North Carolina defense, not the North Carolina, the Notre Dame defense?
Well, the big thing is going to be the matchup in the trenches between both lines because we saw the last game. That was the big thing as far as Notre Dame just controlling the game up front and shutting Travis Etienne down, which is something that nobody has been able to do up until this point. So for Clemson, it's going to be huge for them to establish themselves early, establish that run, which will help make the game easier for Trevor Lawrence, keep him out of obvious situations. And then they've got to find a way to get some pass rush. Ian Book, he probably didn't even have to wash his uniform after that game was over with because he was upright the entire football game. And so they've got to do that. And Kyron Williams also had a great game. So it's going to come down to the trenches, and you can say that for a lot of games. And some teams are able to overcome shortcomings there. But for this game, when we look at it, just plain and simple, it's going to come down to the trenches on both sides.
Speaking of the trenches, you know, Notre Dame didn't have to deal with Tyler Davis from Clemson in that first matchup up at Notre Dame. How much of a difference do you think that will make for Clemson having him back?
It will make a big difference. He's one of the nation's best interior players, and we know with him, and he can definitely help out his buddy Brian Bassi down there in the middle of that defensive line. So, yeah, it's going to be huge to have him back, and also to have him backed up by James Skalski. Hopefully he can last the football game and stay injury-free.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting set there when it comes to, as you said, the battle in the trenches. As far as the Notre Dame offense goes, Ian Book has put up had a pretty good season, but do you think he's kind of underrated at quarterback, where people just kind of look and they don't really see the eye-popping stats every game?
Definitely. I mean, he's a guy that for the most part of the season has been a game manager. It's up until the last 4 games where he's really stepped up and been dominant. He's been huge, over 1,400 total yards, 11 touchdowns, and 1 interception in just the last 4 games. And so he's really started to show himself, especially in that Clemson football game. He looked unstoppable in that game, and he was fantastic. And that's what Irish fans have been waiting on from him. And so, yeah, I definitely think he's been overlooked, and for good reason, for the better part of the beginning of the season. But he's come on for the for the Irish when they needed it most. And so they'll be looking to him again for another big game if they want to win this one.
So one other note on this championship game, Notre Dame's defensive coordinator has decided to take the job at Vanderbilt. How do you think that's going to affect the team as they head into this matchup?
I mean, I think he would definitely want to go out of there with a great reputation and going out on a winning note. He wants to get a national championship, I'm pretty sure, as much as anybody. So I'm sure that he'll be able to multitask and handle his duties at Vanderbilt right now in its infant stages while trying to get Notre Dame a national championship. I mean, that's huge to be able to say you won one at a program like Notre Dame. And so I think he'll do his best, and I don't think the Irish will have to worry too much about whether there will be a drop-off.
All right, well, we do have some coaching news around the ACC. Justin Fuente is going to stay on at Virginia Tech. Was that news that kind of shocked you a little bit?
I wouldn't say shocked. I'm not completely surprised. I thought that they will probably evaluate that and perhaps a change will be made. But I think they're showing good faith in Fuente with everything they had going on with this season with COVID and all the cases they had and how many guys they had missing on a given weekend. So I think they took all that into consideration, and they obviously feel like their program's on the right track, and we'll see what he can do next year. Congrats to him.
Well, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the bowl season. It's we're almost to the point now where it's kind of cut and dry up top. You've got 6, maybe 7 teams that have a potential shot to get into the CFP. But after that, it kind of falls down. And what I mean by that is that I wonder if any team that accepts a bowl bid, if we're going to even have any decent bowl games this season, because I just think a lot of teams are going to opt out, and a lot of players are going to opt out as well. And if they do play, it's going to be a show of your youngsters is basically the way that I think the bowl season will go.
Yeah, I think it will too. I mean, it's just one of those years where it's just going to be like that. But hey, it's always good to look forward to the future, and a lot of programs will get to see a lot of young guys, in their program and see what they'll be able to do and have something to look forward to in what will hopefully be a normal season next year.
Yeah, I mean, define normal at this point, man. I mean, it is truly a mess the way, and not in a bad way. It's just that every week you don't really know what's going to happen. I mean, Michigan just had their game canceled this week. They were supposed to play in the I think we're supposed to play Iowa, if I remember correctly. I can't remember, but I mean, their 3rd straight game that's gone that way. I mean, you really and truthfully don't know each week until Thursday or Friday when the tests start coming out.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, but as long as we get a great college football playoffs, which it looks like that's what we're going to get, then I think everything will be copacetic, and we'll get some good ball games to go with it. We'll just have to chalk it up to what's been a wild 2020.
Yeah, I hear you on that. Well, let me ask you this about the college football playoff. Why are people not giving Southern Cal their due? I mean, we're getting a lot from everyone talking about, hey, Ohio State, they've got their 5 wins, etc. But Southern Cal is a Power 5 team that has a perfect record, that is going into their conference championship. They're playing an Oregon team that was everybody's darling to win the Pac-12 at the beginning of the season. But the latest CFP rankings have them at 15th. Is it a bit of a hypocrisy on the CFP front that they're not including Southern Cal, but they're trying to force Ohio State down our throat?
Well, I have to say, I think from my last few conversations, you're not a big fan of Ohio State.
I'm not a fan of any team that plays 5 games and expects to be in the playoff. I don't care if it's any team. If you play 5 games, we're supposed to just say, hey, that's the prettiest girl in the show, even though she hasn't done anything. We're just going to put her up there. I don't agree with any team that has only played 5 games.
Yeah, I mean, there are a whole lot of factors to be considered, when you talk about that. And I think that USC, the reputation of West Coast football, you want to talk eyeball tests with USC and the fact they've had to come back and battle back in pretty much every game that they play this year against lesser competition, and what they've done the last few years. I think with Ohio State, I think what the thing they're looking at is, I mean, there's without a doubt, when you look at NFL rosters, and I know those guys aren't out there playing, but when you look at NFL rosters, when you look at this Ohio State football team, this is one of the best teams in the country. And they've had unfortunate circumstances that were out of their control. I mean, they can't help that they play 5 games. They can't help that this season's gone the way it's gone. So I think they're looking at it, hey, do these kids deserve to be punished when we know this is one of the best teams in college football? So do we want to leave them out for things that were outside of their control? And I think that's the big debate with that. I think Ohio State's one of the 4 best teams in the country, and I'm not going to be upset at all to see them playing in the playoffs, because I know I'm going to get a great football team littered with NFL talent, with probably the number 2 pick in the NFL draft at quarterback. So I'm just fine with Ohio State getting in there.
All right.
Well, and I just think that USC's reputation, kind of hurts them a little bit in this, and just the Pac-12's reputation as a whole.
All right. Well, we can agree to disagree on that, but I do have to ask you about the rankings tonight. This is the final set of rankings that'll come out before the final rankings on this Sunday. Of course, Wes Bryant from the ACC Digital Network. How do you think the rankings are going to come out tonight? Do you think there's going to be any movement at all?
No, I don't think there'll be any movement. I think it's going to be the usual suspects. Everybody's going to wait to see what's going to happen this weekend and just go from there.
All right, there you go. Wes Bryant from the ACC Digital Network. Looking forward to the ACC championship game and the content you guys are going to put out over there on the ACC Digital Network this weekend.
Definitely check it out. About another hour or so, I got the Notre Dame side of things for the preview coming out with myself and Eric Hansen from the Notre Dame Insider. So be on the lookout for that. We got you covered with everything Clemson. We got top 5 championship moments. We got Ian Book and Trevor Lawrence. We got all kind of stuff for you on the ACCDN on all social platforms and YouTube. So check us out there. Check me out on Twitter, Wes Got Range, and on Instagram, Wes Got Range 704.
All right, Wes, man. Thanks for joining us here on the Rundown, buddy. I appreciate it.
No doubt, Rob. Appreciate you, man.
All right, there we go. Wes Bryant from the ACC Digital Network. I completely disagree with everything he said about Ohio State. And we talked about that yesterday, but the other end of it, too, is that if you're going to say that Ohio State deserves to be there with a 5-0 record, you should do the same thing with Southern Cal. Now, bear in mind, if I had it my way, neither one of them would be considered, period. Because neither one of them belong in the CFP. They haven't proven that they can do anything yet. And we talked about that yesterday, but it's just funny to me, the hypocrisy that we're going to be fed tonight, where they might move Southern Cal up to 12, maybe 11. All right, or they may move up a little bit, but we're still packed behind the set of, well, Ohio State's just better because they have NFL talent. Yeah, but they didn't play. I don't understand why people can't get that. They didn't play a full season. It's amazing to me. 803-978-1832. Already getting responses on Twitter at Rob Sounds Good. James says, I disagree with the current caller. Of course, he's talking about West there. He says, going to get a great team due to talent, etc. Would argue there are a lot of teams with NFL talent that aren't great teams. Yeah. I mean, I can definitely understand that, but I'm so overly frustrated with we're just constantly going to be fed this. Well, Ohio State's great. Okay. Go out. Let's try going out and beating Northwestern this weekend, getting your 6th win. That way you'll have over half a season. Good for you. 803-978-1832. If you want to respond to what Wes said here on the rundown. I've also got a rant from Mike Leach. Apparently, Mike Leach didn't like anything that happened this season, and he pretty much let everybody know about it in his press conference that he had. Crazy. Some comments from the Facebook and the YouTube listeners. Ray says, because the Pac-12 is a bunch of wimps. Okay. Not Just Rock says, reputations do mean crap. Give me a break. They don't mean crap. T. Davis says, I agree, but unfortunately the committee disagrees with us. Yeah. Who's got to be that person on the committee that actually stands up and says, you know what? We don't have to like Ohio State because they didn't play as much. Wonder who that's going to be. And I wonder if that person's going to be kicked out like the drunk uncle at on the holiday season. Not that they're being a drunk uncle, but I'm just saying that's how they're going to be looked at. We all have that drunk uncle that comes over and you're like, oh, gosh, I got to deal with this uncle through the holiday season? Man, that's crazy. And you end up having him play dominoes with the kids or something in the other room at the kids' table. Maybe that's just me. Either way, it's the same theory. When they sit together and they watch these games and they're like, oh, there's Texas A&M, they're playing. There's Alabama, they're playing. Notre Dame's playing. Clemson's playing. Oh, where's Ohio State? Oh, it doesn't matter. They've already got a spot locked off. Doesn't matter. We're doing 3 spots, not 4. And they should be ashamed of themselves. I don't care. The only people who really and truthfully don't think that Ohio State is being just pushed down our throats are the Big Ten and the Ohio State fans. And that's just sad. So my thing is, enjoy your spot. I hope they get Alabama or Clemson in the first round, and I hope that either one of them stomps them into next month. I think Notre Dame beats them by a couple of touchdowns. They're not that good. They're really not. Watch the Indiana game if you don't believe me. Almost lost at home to a basketball school. Let them come back after they were up big. And you know what? They can say, well, that's just one game. Well, you didn't play any other games that were worth anything. So how can you possibly come at me and say, oh, well, we've got this and that and everything else? No, man, I'm not feeling that at all. Another comment from Not Just Rocks, who is my favorite commenter of the day. We got girls in college football and people believing Ohio State should be in the playoffs this year, about par for 2020. Yeah, good point, sir. Good point. More of the rundown when we come back. You're listening to Fox Sports Radio 1400. Yeah, I agree with you, buddy. I don't understand it. It doesn't make any sense. And it's just, but we'll keep getting that fed to us tonight. Yeah, that doesn't matter. Our thoughts don't matter. Hey, man, I'm not being vile, man. I'm just being honest. This is how I feel. I mean, if you have a logical thing there, T. Davis, where it's like you think that Ohio State should be there, then, I mean, I'm willing to listen. But if it's going to be just, well, the eye test, I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that at all. Milton's got a great point. Georgia's got a bunch of players that are going to be on NFL rosters. Why not put them out there? Why not? I mean, that makes a lot of sense. Look, and you know what? It's okay to disagree with me, but I would like people to tell me what makes them think Ohio State is worthy of that. I mean, I would love to hear it. And it's like they can't come at me with anything other than they've got NFL players. And because they've got NFL players, they're supposed to be awesome. Yeah, I'm not feeling that at all. I want a good college football playoff with the teams that have proven the most. All right, let me head back to air here. Welcome back to the Rundown on Fox Sports Radio 1400 around the world on the iHeartRadio app. Comments from some folks. Milton says, I think Georgia would beat Ohio State. Well, according to some folks, if you have NFL talent, then you should be able to go into the college football playoff. So Georgia's got some NFL talent. Why can't they go? Oh, because Georgia played a full season. That's right. And they actually lost some games. I'm not mocking Georgia for losing a couple of games. I'm just saying we figured out that Georgia had some flaws. The first one is that their coach put the wrong guy out there at quarterback, especially to play against against Georgia. I mean, not against Alabama. They go on the road with Alabama to a guy that couldn't hit water if he fell out of a boat. I'm not saying that they couldn't beat Alabama if they had JT Daniels at quarterback now. I'm saying that they would probably played a lot better against Florida, though. Wouldn't that be a much better matchup to look forward to this weekend? Even though I've liked what Florida has done, but JT Daniels at quarterback for Georgia going into the SEC championship game against Alabama with that Georgia defense, that could be interesting. I'd much rather see that than what we're going to see, which is probably a 25-point stomping by Alabama, and the game's over at, 9:15. That's the COVID-approved game, by the way. It'll be done before the COVID comes out at 11 o'clock, like all these governors think that's when, you can catch the coronavirus. That's why they put the SEC game at 8. It'll be over by 9:15. Everybody can get out of there. We do have someone that John chimes in with Ohio State would destroy Notre Dame. Always do. We need a one-time 18 playoff. He says he hates the NCAA. Yeah, you can hate the NCAA. I'm fine with that. If you look at the latest CFP rankings, though, if you had the 18 playoff, your 1 versus 8 matchup would have Alabama against Cincinnati. Anybody want to watch that? Nope. How about your number 2 matchup? Notre Dame and Iowa State. Might be a decent game. 3-6 would be Clemson and Florida. That might be an interesting matchup because you're going to have 2 pretty good quarterbacks. And let's see here. 4 and 5 would be Ohio State and Texas A&M. Out to the phones we go. 803-978-1832. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Rundown.
What's up, man?
What's up, brother? How you doing?
I'm good.
What you got for the show today?
How about them dogs?
Are you talking with Georgia? Yeah, man. Georgia, I'd rather see them in the SEC championship game, especially after what I watched down at Florida losing in a fog to LSU the other night.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, man. Anything else for the show?
JT Daniels is Christ.
Okay. All right. Appreciate the Georgia fans calling into the show today. But those matchups would be more interesting, but I don't know if I'm a favor of an 18 playoff anymore. I like the idea of the 4 teams. I guess I could get into the 6 teams. I know that would be, one team would have to have a bye. I get that, but I think the 8-team playoff would be kind of just a little bit too much. Your 9 and 10 teams, by the way, you have a chance for a Cinderella with Cincinnati, but your 9 team would be Georgia. 10 would be, am I got this right on my rankings here? Yeah. would be Miami. Ugh, I don't know about all that. Out to the phones we go. 803-978-1832. Welcome into the show. Good afternoon.
Yeah, I got a question.
Sure.
What happens if Northwestern wins and Florida wins?
Well, if Northwestern wins, we all get to laugh and laugh and laugh and laugh and laugh. And then we get to watch the four-letter network try to hokey pokey their way out of, well, we didn't think Ohio State was that great at all. And then they're going to shift to Alabama's the greatest of all time. And they're going to take all of their Big Ten folks and stuff them in a closet until it's time for the basketball season. As far as if Florida beats Alabama, oh, man, I don't know. That could throw things into a crazy mix because I think Notre Dame gets into the playoff with or without a win this weekend. So let's say that Clemson wins. I think you put Clemson in, Notre Dame in, and then it kind of flows down from there. I still think Alabama gets in.
How about Texas A&M?
I think Texas A&M, in my opinion, has a better shot than Ohio State simply because they played a full season, even though they lost by 4 touchdowns to Alabama.
But they have NFL talent.
They do have NFL talent. You are right about that.
All right. Thank you, man.
All right, man. Thanks a lot. Here we go. Back out to the phones we go. And we'll welcome in the next caller. Caller, welcome in to the rundown. How are you?
Hey, buddy. How you doing?
Good. What's going on?
Not much, man. T. Davis from the chat. I follow you a good bit, you and Jack Pot.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Y'all, man. I follow y'all.
Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
man.
All right, what you got for the show today, buddy?
Yeah, man. I just calling because, like, I think it's really interesting, man. While I'm typically against, a playoff that's over 4 teams, I can see the argument for this year. But like you were saying, man, like, when the last 5 or 6 years has there been more than maybe 2 teams that are really worth the actual playoff? I mean, really. Usually that first line of games, right? Usually they're garbage. I mean, seriously, they're garbage. Aside from last year, the Ohio State game and Clemson game was great. I mean, that was a great game. You know what I mean? But aside from that, look on the other side. When Alabama played Oklahoma, horrible. When we played Notre Dame, horrible. Like, I mean, so at the end of the day, I can understand why people really want to just see more football. And trust me, I love more football. But typically, they're not. It's usually Clemson and Alabama and everybody else. This year, I would actually make an argument where it's maybe Alabama and everybody else. But aside from that, no, I don't want to see number 1 Alabama play number 8 Cincinnati. I just don't want to see that game. I'm sorry.
Well, and it's sort of like that every year. I mean, if you remember last year, we had the matchup with LSU and what was it, Oklahoma, and LSU was beating them senseless. And I mean, so sometimes your 1-4 matchup isn't very good.
Right. I mean, the time that we had when Clemson won for the first one with Deshaun, and how we zeroed Ohio State, and then on the other side, I think Alabama had beaten Washington that year. I mean, it was just ridiculous. And so again, I love football. I will never be against more football. But when I think about just expanding and expanding and expanding and expanding, come on, man. Like, I mean, at the end of the day, these are college students. And right now, anything outside of just a 14 playoff, you're risking injury for students who really don't need those games. I mean, and I'm a graduate from Coastal Carolina. I love Coastal Carolina before we got a football team. But do I want to see Coastal Carolina like in the playoff? No, I don't want to see us in the playoff.
No,
like, get out of here.
Yeah, I mean, you make a lot of great points, and I agree with that on the expansion because it takes away the drama from the regular season. And, it takes away from the fact that you better have your stuff together when you go play at Syracuse on a Thursday night, because if you don't, that night in October may stub your toe or you're not playing in January.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I mean, it takes away all that.
Man. I mean, I'm for more of the old school football where every game really counts. As we expand more and more and more, I mean, then your games don't count. You're having people in the playoff who lost 3 games, who lost 2 games. Like, no, that's not good football, man. I think at the end of the day, it means something with who you win against and how many games you lose. And at the end of the day, I don't want to see teams that have 2 losses in a playoff. I just don't. I don't care what conference they're coming from. I don't care about that.
All right, man. Hey, I appreciate you joining us here on the Rundown, buddy. You can welcome anytime, man. Thanks so much.
Cool, buddy. Thank you.
All right, there you go. Appreciate the caller calling in today here on the Rundown. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I've got to play this clip from Mike Leach, who's not happy with the football season. We'll address some of the comments over in the Not Just Rock says, let's put Vanderbilt and Georgia Tech in the national championship and turn the whole world upside down. I mean, at this point, could 2020 be any more of a mess? I don't know for sure. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll have more of the Rundown for you on Fox Sports Radio 1400. I almost blew Red Bull out of my nose on that. Thank you, Not Just Rocks. That's hilarious. That's funny, Junkyard Dog. Jimmy with a good point. OSU versus A&M. Yeah, you might be right about that. I don't know about Sid. I don't know about what you're saying there. Are you talking about with not playing JT Daniels? I don't know what's up with that. I don't know what exactly happened there with all that, man, but he should be. I think Kirby Smart should be held accountable for that. If there was something that he didn't see, and he thought Stedman Jackson or whatever his name is, was going to be the answer there. I mean, he had DeJuan Mathis out there throwing the ball around, and I was rooting for DeJuan Mathis because of his story, but I mean, this ends up being the same year for Georgia, man. They're just not with it, man. And I don't even know what other word to describe it than just disappointing. That's going to be a good game. Uglenglehi is going to show out, in my opinion. This Mike Leach audio is hilarious. Welcome back to the Rundown on Fox Sports Radio 1400 around the world on the iHeartRadio app. Of course, streaming live on Facebook and YouTube as well. My name is Rob Sanders. Thanks for joining us today. I got to play this audio from Mike Leach at his press conference. Apparently, Mike Leach has a history of saying stupid stuff, but he kind of went off on everybody today. And I'm just going to play the audio of Mike Leach basically losing his mind. This is at a press conference. Mike Leach going silly. Here we go.
You know, it's just the stop and start and just the incessant change, adjustment. You know, it's yeah, you guys are dealing with it yourselves. I mean, you guys see you all sitting in these rooms, and some of you look a little more cheerful than others, and some look tried to look cheerful, but you're kind of gloomy because you're stuck in there. And then and so then you know, we're sitting here, you know, doing it like this and pretending it's all for real. And this is just like a regular press conference. Yeah, this is such a brilliant idea. Let's do it like this all the time. I mean, everybody's been through this, and you know, the determination. Yeah, we got some problems we have to deal with. And then, you know, anytime you get committees involved in something, it's going to be convoluted, twisted up, and then the politicians are trying to beat their chest and maximize on this at every step. And in the end, together with all the commotion and clutter, we've created one of the most joyless seasons on earth. And hopefully we have the presence of mind to not repeat it this way again.
Mike Leach losing his mind in his press conference, basically saying the same thing that everybody has always been saying. COVID sucks. I don't like that we've had to play, and it sucks. his first season down there. I mean, he's upset. Maybe he should. Maybe he's just upset that his team is 2-7, and maybe he's upset that all of this crap that he was throwing around when he's out in the Pac-12 or he's at Texas Tech and he's able to light up teams like Baylor and whatever slum team he could light up in the Pac-12. Yeah, you can't really do that in the SEC, and maybe that's weighing on him a little bit. But he looked into the Zoom screen and told the press that was there, y'all don't look happy. You think the boosters from Mississippi State are thinking, uh-oh. T. Davis says, why do people find his press conferences so alluring? I just like what I think the one thing that I do respect him for is that at least he comes off as honest. And maybe that's because I've had to deal with the Will Muschamp press conferences forever, where he just basically comes out and it's, well, hopefully we're going to have to coach these guys up a little bit. And I'm looking forward to a big night at Williams-Brice Stadium. We should have a great fan base there. And looking forward to having a big crowd. Our fans are the absolute best. And I'm not going to tell you anything about injuries because it's none of your damn business. And I enjoy DJ Durkin. I think that he's a great man. How dare you question him at all? Yeah. I mean, that's what we've dealt with forever here. And you've got Coach Dabo Swinney in the upstate, who I think is honest in the majority of his press conferences. But let's be honest, if Dabo Swinney is questioned at all, Dabo gets he gets upset. I mean, you've seen him single out reporters as well. But the one thing I like about Mike Leach is that he'll at least tell you what it is. He sounds like a chatty Cathy doll that has had the string cut, though, and you have to constantly pull it in and out a little bit. But COVID bad, you don't look happy, et cetera, et cetera. Why is my offense not working here? I would literally, if I think I could probably get credentials to sit in on his press conference. I'd ask, that would be one of the questions I'd ask him. Hey, how does it feel to play against those SEC defenses where, let's be honest, you had 2 games this year that you won. You beat an LSU team that their defense is so backwards, their defensive backs are running into each other. And you beat Vanderbilt by 7. Congratulations. Maybe that's what he's upset about. I don't know. And he knows he's in for it. Because signing day is tomorrow. And I don't think a lot of kids are going to be going to Mississippi State. I mean, let's just be honest. I'll look up the numbers during our next break here, but wouldn't surprise me if they were maybe just ahead of Vanderbilt as far as in the SEC recruiting rankings. South Carolina's kind of down there too. We'll talk a little bit about that later in our next break about who may be going and staying for South Carolina and some of the guys that are supposed to sign tomorrow. And I read something too on the big defensive line commitment, the number 1 player in the country, whose name escapes my mind right this second, but was a Clemson commit and then said, hey, I'm going to, open up my options a little bit. Yeah, we'll talk about that. He says, actually, we can do it right now. He says that I love these guys that like fixate on recruiting stuff because I think I've said it before and I'll say it again. No one knows what these kids are going to do. I don't think these kids know what they're going to do. But it is fun to follow. So the young man from the big defensive end from out in California, he made a visit to Clemson, an unofficial visit, and there's talk that they may be in the mix along with the Southern Cal and Arizona State. So we'll see where he goes. But he says, hey, I'm going to let the coaches know that I'm going to be there on the 16th, but I'm not going to announce until the 2nd. So which coach is going to leak that information? Which film editor is going to leak that? Because that's going to happen. They'll hang someone else out to dry with that once they've got his name in ink. We'll see how that goes. Remember when signing day? I know I'm sounding old now, but like signing day used to be, they'd get the facts and that's it. Now, there'll be places tomorrow where it's almost like a party. DJs and everything else. So we'll keep you up to date on that with the recruiting stuff tomorrow. And with South Carolina's recruiting class, where they're going to be, they're ranked like, I think, 93rd right now. And I want Gamecock fans to, when you step back and you look at this for a second, you can't really hold Shane Beamer accountable for this class. This, in my opinion, is a salvage class. What I mean by that is you're going to get some guys try to build some depth, but everything caters into the next class. Now, you may have one or two guys that you end up building, and 2 years from now they help you be a much better team. But as far as highly rated guys, South Carolina has no 5-star, no 4-star commitments on this class. They do have 10 3-star commitments. Now, the stars can waver from one point to another. It's all about how much you can develop players, which we don't know what kind of staff Shane Beamer is going to have yet. Can they develop talent? That's going to be the next big thing. They may be able to put those 3 stars into a blender and make them into something great. We don't know. So right now, it's a very exciting time for South Carolina football because there's so many questions out there. It's not a lot of doom and gloom right now. Remember at the end of last season, everything's finished up, you're 4-8, and you're thinking, man, next season's going to be, The reality is right now, you don't have that. It's optimism. Now, how long the optimism is going to be there, a lot of it depends on the next season. But if you could quite possibly get, let's just say, one recruit that nobody really thought you were going to get, and I don't know who's working behind the scenes, but if you get one of those that can carry over into the summer or into the spring, and that makes you feel a little bit better, then you have a good spring. And you don't have a lot of guys that defect and head out to the transfer portal. Those are the little baby steps that could help the South Carolina program. More of the rundown when we come back. You're listening to Fox Sports Radio 1400. I have allergies, ladies and gentlemen. I don't have the COVID. That's a good point. If they have the whole thing of if the ACC opted out, which I don't think they will, but if they did, then what would the playoff committee do? They'd put Ohio State at 1. They would claim that the ACC doesn't care about competition, so we're going to put Ohio State at 1. That's funny. What a mess. I'm hoping someone gets it right over there. I'm hoping. I really am, but I have little faith. I wonder who Auburn's going to hire, by the way. That's something that's out there that's a little interesting. Who is Auburn going to hire? I don't know. They better get somebody. If they hire Kevin Steele, if I'm an Alabama fan, I'm laughing to the end of time. I mean, literally laughing like I'm at a Dave Chappelle show. If they hire Kevin Steele. What a disaster that would be. Final segment of the rundown this afternoon. Don't forget, Clemson Sports Talk is next. You can follow Lawton Swan here from 4 to 6. Teddy Hefner's on in the mornings from 9 to noon. A couple of comments from the chat room that kind of made me think a little bit here. Sid Irish says the ACC should claim COVID and get 2 teams in. If that happened, the college football playoff would just put Ohio State at number 1. That's what they would do. And I ask about who's going to take over for the Auburn job. And T. Davis there makes a good point. It's a very difficult job. We talked a little bit about that earlier this week. And I looked it up. I mean, they're the only team that has to play every season. Georgia, Alabama, LSU, and Texas A&M. That's tough. That is tough. So, yeah. But, and here's the other thing, too. If you're a coach, do you want that job? Because, going in, Gus Malzahn was, 34 games over 500 in 8 years. That's pretty good. Okay? It means he was averaging about 8 wins a season. He won the he had an appearance in the national championship game. He had won an SEC title, won the West twice, was 3-5 against Alabama. But that's not good enough. So, going in now, maybe there's a competitive side of that. And I kind of feel that way too on some things. Imagine being like the best. You're at a basketball gym and you're the best player in the pickup game out there. Do you want to take and have the 4 worst players play with you against the other 5 best players? If you're a competitor, you want that. And I think that may end up being what happens with Auburn. The competitive side of someone says, you know what? I can make that happen there. I look forward to the fact that I've got to play LSU every year. I look forward to the fact that I've got to play Alabama every year. Alex with a good point online. Sounds like I think he's referring to South Carolina, may have hired our head coach just a little early. Gus is a head coach, not an offensive coordinator. Yeah. I'm still wondering who South Carolina is going to get as their offensive coordinator. And Coach Beamer did say, hey, we're going to get someone we're going to run our offense to cater to the talent that we have. Well, let's just be honest. The talent that you have is Kevin Harris. Flat out. Okay? Now, I know that everybody and their brother has been on board with the young man Luke Doty because he can move around and make plays with his feet. Man, I think you got to work on some of that, though. And if you look at his numbers, not that good. And the saga of what's going to happen with Ryan Helinski, that's a big deal for the Gamecocks as well. Alex says they may hire Lincoln Riley's brother, Garrett Riley. That might be good, too. But the question is that where are they going to go? And on the defensive side, too. There's some names that are out there that make a lot of sense. But will Shane Beamer dip into the past? And he's got a huge, I mean, he's coached at like 7 different spots. So he's coached with a lot of different coaches. And of course, he's got his dad, who's a Hall of Fame coach, that he can lean on him as far as contacts and everything else. But I think that as far as the Gus Malzahn thing, man, if you could convince him to be an offensive coordinator, that would be outstanding. But the other part of it too is that, he's getting paid $21 million to stay home. Now the competitor side of him says, yeah, I want to coach. We'll see how that works. Mason from Vandy as the new defensive coordinator. Yeah. Derek Mason, I think, would be great. Absolutely great. I thought he did a good job at Vanderbilt. Even though they didn't have the results on the field, there were no problems. If you remember, when he went into Vanderbilt, there was the whole thing with James Franklin left, and you had Vanderbilt players of being accused of raping people and all kinds of stuff. He went in and cleaned that up, and I think that's great. Why not? Some of the outlandish names on Twitter, by the way, Bud Foster coming in. I doubt that. But still, that's going to be the big thing. And tomorrow, that's why I wanted to put this out there. With signing day tomorrow, everyone is going to be looking at the Gamecocks recruiting class at right now number 93. Walk back from the ledge a little bit, okay? Give Shane Beamer some time to work. But just remember, this class, in theory, doesn't really matter. And I know that sounds like I'm being harsh, but Shane Beamer's not going to be judged on this class. Tomorrow, as a Gamecock fan, though, you're going to look at it and be like, man, we're 93rd. What is that all about? And that's what happens. Another comment, until Saban dies, Auburn is his slave. Yeah, that's great. By the way, the whole thing with Nick Saban, man, if you look across the SEC, there are so many coaches that have changed since Nick Saban came to Alabama. He truly does own the conference. Fire of All says, Malzahn beat Nick Saban. Yeah, he beat him 3 out of 8 times. No other coach has really done that. Not very many coaches have done that. And, Nick Saban made a comment about that the other day. You can make an argument that Nick Saban changed his offense to the high-flying attack that it is now simply based on what Auburn does. I agree with the folks over there talking about the I think firing Gus Malzahn was a stupid move. Kirkless says, or Karakis, I'm sorry. I don't mean to butcher your name there. Will and his staff never could develop players. That's a fact. The talent is there. We just need the right staff who knows how to develop players. And you make a great point, sir. If you look up South Carolina's talent composite on the 247 Sports site, this season, South Carolina was one of only, I think, 2 teams that were in the top 25 as far as composite goes that were not in the top 25. What I mean by that is the Gamecocks roster this season was ranked 21st. So they had a lot of talent. Now, I know that you can pick at that and say, but Rob, a lot of it was on the defensive side of the ball. I get that. But that composite says a lot. That says how much 5, 4-star, 3-star talent you've got on your team. And a lot of it did lean towards the defensive side of the ball. But then you see the South Carolina defense, and it was really bad. I mean, really bad. The South Carolina offense had issues where they had problems this season, but they still finished with a 1,000-yard rusher, and they had a great receiver in Shi Smith. So you had that going for you. I think the reason South Carolina was so terrible this year was because of their defense. I think offense showed problems later on. I have to look at the composite there, and Alex wants to know where it ranked as far as the SEC goes. I get that. But I still think with South Carolina's schedule this year, they were better than 2-8. They were better than 2-8. So I know that people look at me like I'm silly when I say that, especially after watching this team. But I do think that South Carolina had talent this year, and it was just not was not coached right. That defense should have been lights out. Defense should have been lights out, in my opinion, especially at this point. But going into next season, you've got at least, I think, one good chip on the offensive side of the ball. And on the defensive side of the ball, you got guys like Birch. You've got other people that have moved on. Shiloh Sanders announced that he's heading on. I was looking forward to seeing how he was going to blossom and what would be his junior year. But I guess we'll get to see that at Jackson State where he goes to play for his dad. So there's that. I think more coaching moves are probably coming in the next couple of days. Justin Fuente, by the way, staying on at Virginia Tech. The lowdown on that, they couldn't find anybody else they like to come in because I think the Virginia Tech people are not very happy with Fuente. All right, back at it tomorrow, same time, same channel, 3 o'clock. Lawton Swan of Clemson Sports Talk is next. He's the czar of Clemson Sports. My name is Rob Sanders. I'm on Twitter at Rob Sounds Good. Podcast for this show will be up at 5 o'clock tomorrow. Former Gamecock quarterback Corey Jenkins joins us here on The Rundown. We'll see you tomorrow right here on Fox Sports Radio 1400. Hey, I appreciate you guys, man. Yeah, I agree with all that. Alex makes a lot of good points. Hope you guys check in tomorrow, man. 3:00. See you later.